basically that we're going to introduce the new features of V6.06.02, right? And today's features we're not only introduce about what these features can do. We will also show you how to set them on in EasyBuilder Pro step by step. All right, and here's today's agenda here. The first part is the condition object. This is a new condition. This is a new object in EasyBuilder Pro V6.06.02. And the second part, we were going to show you that because we add some new conditions to drive the action trigger. And the third part is that we have now our screen hard copy can crop the screen, so you don't need to hard copy. You don't need to make the hard copy of the entire HMI screen. And also, we are going to show you how to send the screenshot from CMTX HMI to the PC. And the fourth part is that we're going to introduce about Schneider symbolic addressing driver here. The last part is we are going to talk about some other new features of V6.06.02, right? And because that today's webinar, I'm going to show you how to use this object in EasyBuilder Pro step by step. So it will be, if you have already installed V6.06.02 or the latest V6.07.01, you can also follow my steps and try to play with these objects. All right. All right. So the first part, we're going to introduce about the condition object here. Right. And the condition object is an object that just like the if command in macro, right? So you basically you can choose the operator as an AND or condition, and you can add any condition you want to put in the condition object here. Then the output you can trigger a bit. All right. All right. So basically, that condition object is an object that can run some logical conditions. Right. But condition object can also be used with action trigger, right? You can use a condition object to drive the action trigger, to make action trigger do all different kind of commands. And you can also use condition object to as the condition of another condition object. You can use one condition object to drive another condition object, and you can use second condition object to drive another condition object. All right, so basically that condition object is just like an if, okay, if function here. All right, so here I'm going to have our first example here, right? So here's a scenario here. When machine's fill is less than 50%, and the machine switch is on, turn on the auto refill switch, right? Because that in this example, we only need to use turn on a bit, right? Or turn on a switch, turn on a bit. So in this example, we only need to use one condition object here. Right, so about the address here, I set the fuel percentages as LW0 here, and machine switch as LB0 here, and refuel switch as LB1 here. All right? All right, so if you have your EasyBuilder Pro now, you can try to use them with me. You can run them with me together. Right, so the first part is that to open condition object, right, and set the operator as AND. All right, so let me go to my EasyBuilder Pro here, right, and in object here, right, object, go to the object type, object tab here, and on the right side, you will see a if icon here. This is the condition object, right? Just click it, right, and press new, right? And here we can create a new condition object here. And here we're going to set the operator as AND. All right. All right. So the next part is that we're going to add our condition here. The first one is that the fuel, right, the fuel percentage. Right, so I'm going to type here fuel percentage here. All right, and we're going to trigger a value here, so we should choose the condition is a value, so I'm going to choose value address here. And the type is word, right? Because the fuel percentage is LW0 here, so I set my address as LW0 here. And the condition is that when the fuel percentage is less than 50%, right? So here I will set the condition as 50, right? So this is the first condition I'm going to set here, right? I can use PowerPoint so you can see it with bigger, so the screen will be easier to see, right? So the first condition is on the right side, the fuel percentage one. Okay, so now it is okay, and I'm going to add a second condition, which is the machine switch. All right, so machine switch is LB0 here, and the condition is that when the machine switch is on, so I'm going to enable it when the value is on here. All right. So I'm going to press OK. So I've done setting the two condition, and you can watch this slide so to follow the setting here. Right, the next part is that we're going to trigger the machines, the output. We're going to trigger the output, and the output, we're going to enable the output function here, and the refuel switch is LB1 here, so I'm going to choose it as LB1. Right, then we have done with this scenario, we can use this condition object to trigger it. All right. So I press OK here, and I'm going to, let's run our project to see how things work, right? So I'm going to give it an initial value, right? So the condition object will not start right away. All right, so let's see. It'll be 0 here. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys, that was our building. They are going to broadcast about they're going to have some exercise later. All right. So I'm going to, I just put another toggle switch here. So So I'm running this as a machine switch. Then here's the refill switch. Refill switch here is LW1. Is LB1 here, right? So now I'm going to use the value and the bit to trigger another bit. Right. So let's run the simulation here. All right, guys. So now I'm going to change the value of the fuel to less than 50%. All right, so I'm going to give it a 49. Right, because the condition object is using an AND object, so they need to the LB1 will only be triggered when both conditions are fit. Right, so I'm going to trigger the bit here, and you can see that after I press this, I can trigger the refill switch here. All right. So far, this is our first example here. I think everyone should be able to follow it here now, right? Okay. So we're going to move to another second example here, right? The second example is that when switch 1 or switch 2 is on, and we're going to set 5 words addresses value from 1 to 5 in order. All right, so here, this is our second example here. And in this example, we need to use condition object and a action trigger here. Right, we need to use condition object to drive action trigger. Right, so these are the addresses we're going to use now. We're going to use LB10 and LB11 here, and we're going to use 5 word addresses from LW10 to LW14 here, right? So this is going to be our second example here, right? So the first part is that we're going to open our condition object to create another condition here, right? So let me close this first. Right, so let me delete it. Right, so the condition object here, we're going to create another condition object here. We're going to call it example2 here. Right. So because then our condition is OR, right? So the operator is OR, and I'm going to create 2 conditions here. The first one is that it will be 10 here, and enable it if the value is on. All right. Right. And the second condition is the LB11, and the condition is also on here. All right. So because that we don't need to trigger another bit, so the output here we don't need to enable the output option here. Right, we only need to set the condition here. Right, and we are down setting the condition object here. Right. So let me use the show you here. Right. So you can do it yourself. All right, so I think this should be quite easy here. So we're going to move on and we are going to create a action trigger here. In action trigger, we're going to choose a action trigger global here. All right, so I'm going to create an action trigger. And you can see that there are different modes here. All right, so here we're going to choose condition object. Right, and the condition object, I'm going to choose example 2 here, and the trigger will be from off to on. This means that the condition sustain, right? So we're going to choose to trigger it when condition object is from off to on. And then now we're going to set 5 addresses, right, to write the value from 1 to 5 in order. Right, so I'm going to create in 5 different action group here. Right, so first one, I'm going to give you a value 1 here. That's W10 here, right? Right, so I'm going to, another one is I'm going to give 2 to LW11. Right, I'm going to create another 3 here. It will be 12. So I'm going to put a delay in each action group so we can see the value are written in order. So give me a 1 second delay here. Okay, so now here I have finished my action trigger here. So I'm going to show you the slide of our action trigger setting here. All right, so you can set your action trigger now. Right. Right. All right. So after we have finished setting the action trigger, now we're going to run our project here, right, to see how the result work here. So I'm going to put two toggle switch here. It'll be 10 and 11. Right. Then I'm going to put a 5 numeric object from LW10 to 14 here. All right, so I have created this object so we can see how the result works. Okay, so because that our condition operator is a OR operator, all right, so when I turn on any one of the toggle switch here, that the address, a word address will be written 1 to 5 in order here, right? So you can see that, okay, when I press the button here, so it has written these values, right? So you can also try it. Right, I will give some pause here in case that some of you are also following my setting here, right? So sometimes I will pause the slide. And meanwhile, I'm going to answer one question by Carlo here. What is the difference between trigger off to on and trigger on, right? So you can see that. Okay, so here's action trigger here, right? So you can see that there are the trigger here, right? There are off to on, and on to off. If you choose this on, and you didn't enable the check condition recursively, the action trigger will only be triggered once, right? Because the status is on, right? So it will be triggered. But if you choose off to on here, this action trigger will only be triggered when the condition object status is first goes to off, then go back to on. All right. All right. If your condition always stays as on, and the trigger condition you set is off to on, then this action trigger will not be triggered. All right. So that is the difference. Right. So if I choose on, whenever the condition, it is just like kind of like the alarm, right? And if the bit always, the condition always stay on, right? And the action trigger will always be triggered if you check the check condition recursively, right? And if you set as off to on, right? Well, this action trigger will only be used when the condition go back to the previous status, all right, and then turn on again, and this action trigger will be used, all right. So that is basically difference. All right. So I think. All right. So I think this example should quite easy to understand and show you how to use an if condition and action trigger together, right? And another part, as I just said before, is that one condition object can trigger another condition object, right? Just like macros and multi-layers if, right? So you can see that on the left side, I have there's a macro here, right? There's first layer of the if here is A equals to 1 and B equals to A equals to 0 and B equals to 1. And there's another if inside of this, another if here, and if C equals to 1. All right. So let's take a look at the right side here. Right. So we're going to here we have a first condition object, right? And it is LB0 is off and LB1 is on, which matches this macro, the first layer of if here, right? And then there's another condition object, right? So in here we're going to in here we have another condition, right? You can see that this is a condition object. This is not a value here, right? So this condition object will sustain only if the previous condition object 1 is working, all right? So then it will you can put it in the condition object 2 here, and then you can also put the C in the macro, right? C equals to 1 here, and we also put the LB2 is on here in the condition object. So these two condition objects combined together is just like the macro with multi-layers, right? We can use a condition object to trigger another condition object. Right? So, for example, I already have two condition objects here, so I can create another condition object here, right? So I can choose here in the type here, I can choose condition object, right? So I can choose this previous condition I just created, right? So I can use any condition object as one of the condition of my new object here, right? So, and I can also add another condition here. I can use a second condition here, right? So I can also use multiple condition here, right? And I can also create another value here. Right. So this is very flexible, right? So you can create any, you can use a lot of different combinations to make a very complex logic condition here. All right. So and about condition object, that it is also very powerful with action trigger, because that if we use in action trigger we choose the mode as condition object, you can use it to set bits that word execute another macro, and you can trigger data transfer, and you can also trigger file transfer, or you can use it to back up the file. Right. So it can do many different things, right, with only this condition object. So you don't need to, for the users who are not used to write the code, write the macro, to write the program, I think that the condition object and action trigger together can do some things that you used to need to write macros. Right? Now you will use condition object and action trigger to replace it. All right. So this is the first part about our condition object here. All right. And the next part, we're going to talk about the security and action trigger here. Right. So now, before in previous EasyBuilder Pro version, there are only two ways to run the action trigger. The first one is periodical, to run action trigger, and another one is using value change to trigger the action trigger, right? And now we have a condition object which can also trigger, which can also run action trigger. And in this EasyBuilder Pro version, we also can use secure access or control token to run trigger mode, to run action trigger, right? So first we're going to talk about use a user secure access here, right? So different security class can trigger different action. All right. So in enhanced security, we have different security class, right? Each security class you can design that when different class login to this account or log out with this account, and you can run a different action trigger. All right. So and you can decide whether this action should be triggered when the user is logging or log out. All right. All right. So here's a example here, right? So when user one login here and write value 100 into LW100. So let me change it so it will be easier, right? So I'm going to change this 100 here, right? So our example is that when user one login and write value 100 into LW100 address here, and when user one logout will write value 50 into the same LW address here, right? So make sure that you have enabled the enhanced security first, right, in your EasyBuilder Pro, and make sure that your user one have the class A secure label here, right? So you need to go to system setting, right? System parameters here, and go to security, right? And make sure that you have the enhanced security mode and that your user one has the class A enabled, all right? But this should be predefined here. Okay, so here's the step one, is that we're going to create a new action trigger here and set the security class as class A and trigger condition as obtained. Right, so let me delete this object here first. All right, so we're going to go to action trigger global. Like go to action trigger global here, and we're going to create another action trigger here, and we're going to choose the mode as user secure access here, right? And the security access security class, we're going to choose class A, and the trigger if class access is obtained, which means that the user is logging. Right, so we're going to choose obtain here. Okay, so we're going to write a value 100 to LW100 here. Right, so it's 100 and LW100 here. Okay, so now this action trigger is done. And then we're going to set another action trigger when the user is logged out. All right. So I create another condition object here. All right. And the mode still be user secure access, and the security class is also class A. And the trigger condition, I will going to choose lost, which means that this user has logged out. Right. So this one is lost. And the action group here, we're going to create another set word here, which will write 50 into the same word, W100 here. All right. So now I have done the action trigger setting here. Right. So all right, I'm going to leave to here, right? It's these steps, right? I'm going to pause for a few seconds so you can keep up. You can try to set this action trigger here. Okay, so after we have finished this, the action trigger part here, now we're going to create a function key in project window so we can call Windows 70, right? Windows 70 is a pop-up window. Windows 70 is a user login window here, right? For 70 here is a login logout the building window here, right? So we're going to create a function key to call Windows 70, and we choose it as a pop-up window here, right? Right. So we're going to create a function key here, and then we're going to put LW100 on our screen so we can see how it works. And put it right here. And choose the okay, so we can see how the result works here. All right, so we can see how the result works here. I'm going to run the simulation now. All right, so I'm going to log in with user 1 here, right? It should be, all right. So I'm going to click login. So you can see that the numeric object has changed the value to 100 here, all right? So then I'm going to press logout, right? So you can see that the value has changed to 50. So basically, I'm using a user login and logout to control this, to decide how the value is changed. All right. I'm going to give you a few seconds to try these features here, right? Okay, so now we're going to move on. All right, so another, so the action trigger is not only can be used with user account with enhanced security. We can also use control token to trigger action, right? And also that different token can trigger different action, right? And this action can be triggered when token is acquired and unacquired. All right. But first, I think that maybe that most of the people here are not familiar what is control token. It is actually an old feature in our old previous CMT model. This feature already existed. All right. So what is control token? Out here, I'm going to remind everyone here. Right. Control token is a mechanism to prevent multiple CMT viewers to operate one same window at the same time. Right. It is a mechanism. All right. So in case that there are some important windows that you don't want different people to use it at the same time, you only want one operators to use that window at one time, so you can use this control token. So whoever using the CMT viewer to switch to this window, you only want one person to control it, he will get the token. If there are other different people using other CMT viewers to connect to this window here, he cannot do anything to control this window. He can only watch this window. All right. Only the CMT viewer who gets this control token has left this window. He switched his CMT viewer to another window, or he closed the CMT viewer. The other CMT viewer who comes to this page first will get the control token, and he can control this page. All right. Just want to be sure if everyone understand what control token is. Right. If you have a question, about if you're still not understand what control token is, you can put it in the question so I can explain again, right? If anyone still doesn't understand what control token is. All right. No question here. So I suppose that everyone understands what control token is. So I'm going to move on now. Okay. So here's an example, right? So to show you how the control token works. All right. So first, we're going to create a text object in common window, which is window 4. And in this text object security tab, we're going to set the address with LB300, and we're going to enable the security when the bit is on, right? So let's go to, what's this? So let's go to window 4 here, right? So I'm going to choose a text object here, right? So I'm going to type a token occupied, right? So we can use this message to alert other CMT users that someone is already using this screen. All right, so I'm going to enable the security here. I'm going to Just LV 300 here. Right. So, all right. So I'm going to put this on the top of window 4. So in all other windows, we can see it. Right. Okay. So this is the step 1, and the step 2 is that we're going to create a numeric object in Windows 10, and we're going to enable the control token in security tab. Right, and we're going to create a second control token because control token 1 is for local only. All right, and the control token's action is grade label when disabled. Right, so we're going to go back to Windows 10 here, and I'm going to delete this object here. All right, so let me create a numeric object here to choose as 300 here, and I'm going to go to Security tab, right? And you can see that there's a Enable Use Control Token. All right. And now we only have first control token, so we're going to token library to create a new control token 2 here, right? And we're going to choose 2, and we choose enable if token is acquired, right? And the action here will be grade label when disabled, right? After it is done, we're going to put the numeric object here. All right, so let me use the slide here so you can follow this setting here. All right, so I'm going to pause here for a few seconds so you can try to do it yourself. Okay, so we have finished create the numeric object here, and now the next step is that we're going to go to action trigger here, and we're going to create a new action. All right, so we're going to go to action trigger, right? All right, so we go to action trigger here. Right, and we're going to create another action trigger here, right? And the mode here, we're going to choose control token, right? And the token will be second control token number 2 here, and trigger if the token is acquired. All right. So the action group is that we're going to use setBit because we are going to trigger that text object we put in window 4, right? We want to, whenever whoever gets the control token, right? We will show the text in window 4, so other CMD viewer can see okay, someone is using this control token. Someone already get the control token, so I need to wait for someone's left, so I can control that page. Right. So here I'm going to the address here will be LW300. So after we have create the new action trigger here, now we're going to see how it works, right? Because that action trigger requires two CMT viewer, so I'm not going to use a simulation. I'm going to use a actual HMI to show you how this control token works. All right. So I already have a VNC viewer here. All right. So okay. So I'm going to switch to this screen, and next I'm going to open the CMT viewer on my PC here. All right. So we both. So in this project, I have two pages, two windows. All right. So you can see that on the VNC and the CMT viewer are both switched to this IP cameras window here. Right. So you need to observe the top of the window here. You can see that there's no text object here. Right. But if I switch one viewer to window 10, all right? And so you can see that, all right, control token is occupied, which means that this VNC viewer is like the people who is operating the in front of the HMI, all right? So which means that there's a guy who is using the physical HMI here has switched to this window here. All right, so when someone gets switched to that window, he will get the token and we will have alarm text here. All right, so let's watch if I use CMT viewer and switch to window 10 here. You can see that this numeric object here is gray label, right? Because the control token is taken by the guys in front, by the operator in front of the HMI, physical HMI. All right, so if I use the VNC viewer to switch to another window here, all right, and you can see that, oh, now the CMT viewer can operate this numeric object here, all right. So I try to switch the VNC viewer back. You can see that now I cannot use VNC viewer to change the value of this numeric object, right? It needs to wait. I use CMT viewer to switch to another window here, and right, so I will get, so now I can control, I can change this value here. All right, so we can see that this is basically how the control token and the action trigger works. All right. Right, because that control token needs multiple CMT viewers, so if you want to test the function of control token, you need to use it in an actual HMI, right? So you can use different CMT viewer to test your functions, right? All right, so now we have added many different action modes to use with action trigger. We have a periodical condition. We can use value change to run action trigger, and we can also use the new object condition object and use user login logout or control tokens acquire or unacquire to use with action trigger. So now there are more applications can be achieved, right? Because before you need to write complex macros, right? To use like a user login. I want to trigger outlet movement when there's a user login or logout, right? But now we use this. We can simply use action trigger to do other things that you want to trigger, right? So it is much more easy compared with the macro here. All right. All right. So the next part will be our screen hard copy and FTP here. All right. So these are the features that can use screen hard copy here, including our function key, our combo button, our action trigger, which is per page one, and our touch gesture. Our touch gesture, some of our HMI is capacitive, using capacitive screen. You can use touch gesture to do screen hard copy, right? And we can also use POC control, right, to trigger to execute screen hard copy here, right? So in this EasyBuilder Pro version, that we have add the new feature where you can crop the window, right? So let me use right. So let me show this. Right. So I'm going to create a function key. Sorry, not this one. So I'm going to choose screen hard copy here, and there's an option here called crop window here, right? You can see like crop window, and this is how I can decide that when I press this function key, which part of the window I want to print the screen, right? So I can decide. So it is not a screen hard copy of the entire HMI screen. I can just choose which part that I want to copy, right? So this is the crop window function here, right? In our so in every other function, you can also use crop window. For example, POC control here, right? POC control. Right, so I can choose screen hard copy, and here's the crop window option here on the button here, and choose setting here. I can also crop the window. All right, so this is the crop window feature here. All right, and about the FTP is that we can use FTP to save the screenshot to FTP server directly, so you don't need to insert a USB disk or SD card. Right. You can choose FTP directly. Right. So, for example, is that first of all is that you need to install a FTP server on your PC. In my example, I install FileZilla server version 0.9. All right, you can download this software and install it in your PC. All right, so FileZilla server is a very common FTP server software. All right, and in a FileZilla server, you're going to create your own user account. All right, and you're going to define your own folder path. All right. All right, so here you can see that here's on the left side that in a FileZilla server here, I create my own user account here. And okay, and on the right side of this slide, you can see that in the share folder, I'm going to decide which folder on my PC will be the FTP share folder. All right, So this is the setting of your FTP server. All right. So after this, we can go back to EasyBuilder Pro system setting to fill in the FTP server information, which is in the system parameter settings. Right now, our system parameter settings here, we have this FTP option. Right, so just fill in the option here. All right. All right. So next part is that we're going to create a function key and choose screen Hardcopy, right? And set the output as FTP, right? So after let me just give it another. Just create everything here. All right. So here, the HMI folder here, you can define which folder on your PC you want to, the folder name on your PC you want to save your screenshot. So if you just ignore it, then the folder created will be your HMI's IP address. All right. So here I just don't set it. All right. So here's I use a function key here. Right, so I just choose screen Hardcopy here, and the output I will choose to FTP, right? And the FTP path depends on which folder you want to save, right? I'm going to explain about this part later, right? And also you can choose which part you want to crop your window. All right, so it is down here. And here, because I already have the project, all right, I'm going to show you how the result work. Because I already have the project downloaded on my HMI here, so I have, sorry. Right. All right, so let me use this to let me control our HMI here, and when I press the screen copy, I will the HMI will generate a screen a screenshot and save it to my PC. Here I use because I install the FTP server on my another PC here. All right, so sorry, I need to. All right, let me quickly switch to a different PC here. All right, so I have connected to my PC. So you can, because that I install the FTP server on this PC. Okay, so basically we will see when I press screenshot, right, screen copy, that the picture will be saved, will be transferred to my PC's folder. All right. Okay, so I have login to my PC here, And this is the root folder of my FTP server. So you can see that I just pressed this is on my PC, so you can see that it has the screenshot of my HMI, right? So basically, this is the screenshot of the PC, and you can see that, right? Oops. All right, so we stay here, and we're going to press screen Hardcopy. Right, screen I pressed it for several times. Right, so you can see that on the FTP server here, it has created other screenshot on your PC. All right, so this is basically how the screenshot works with the FTP. Okay, so I'm going to explain about the root folder here. Because that in the FTP server, I set this folder V6.06.02 webinar as the root folder. So in EasyBuilder Pro, that I don't need to EasyBuilder. We go back to the system setting, FTP setting here. No, sorry, the function key here. Right, the FTP path, because I saved the screenshot to the root folder directly. So the FTP path, I don't need to fill anything. But if I want to save it to another folder, for example, if I create a folder name called folder A, right? I create a folder named folder A. And in EasyBuilder Pro, the FTP path, you need to tap A. All right. So the screenshot will be saved into folder A instead of the root folder. All right. Just a quick explaining about the FTP, how FTP works. All right. So the next part, we're going to talk about our Schneider new Schneider driver here. Right, so this is our new symbolic addressing driver here. At this moment, that only we or Schneider's HMI can support tag import directly. All right. I mean, if you have other users or if you have experience with Schneider's PLC before, you know that you have to use a Modbus to connect with their PLCs, right? But actually, that their new PLC, you can use tag to communicate with HMI directly. And now we have support this driver. All right. So basically, this will save time to map Modbus address in EasyBuilder Pro, so you can use the tag directly in your EasyBuilder Pro. All right, and you can also read-write multiple address at once. It is faster than traditional Modbus communication, right? Because it is using a different optimized protocol with their symbolic addressing. Right, so this is basically our Schneider driver here. Right, and the setting is actually not very. It's not complex. It's not complicated. If you have used a Siemens 1200, 1500, or maybe you use a Rockwell's symbolic, or use Omron's NJ and X series, the Schneider is actually much easier to set. All right. So the PLC software is called Schneider Unity Pro here. You just need to go to project setting and go to PLC embedded data and go to the enable the data dictionary option. Right? Just enable it. All right. So after you enable it, you just go to variables and FB instance. Go to this folder here and right-click, right, and choose export. The export file type will be .xsy file, right? You need to export this file here. All right. So after you have acquired you get the tag file here, you just go back to EBPro and set the IP address of the driver. All right. The driver's name is called Schneider M340/M580 series with symbolic addressing. All right. You need to choose this driver here, right? And you set the IP address. And just import the tag file, right, with the .xsy format, right? Then you can start to edit your EasyBuilder Pro project to communicate with the PLC. Okay, so the setting is actually quite simple. So I'm not going to demonstrate now because our time is almost up. So I just use the slide to show you that the setting is quite simple, but it is much more convenient for the users, so they don't need to use their Modbus address to mapping with the PLC one by one. They can just use the tag directly. All right. So this is about our new driver here. All right, and the last part we're going to introduce other features here. Right. And the first one is that now on our CMT viewer for our CMT series or CMT-X series, we can directly change the recipe on recipe view directly. Okay, we can directly set them. All right, let me demonstrate it very quick. I'm going to create a recipe here. Right, so give it an address. Right, so I'm going to give it a data here. Okay, so I have created a recipe database here. And now I'm going to put another recipe view. Right, I create a recipe view. And here you can see there's an option called Allow in-cell editing. Right, just enable this option here. All right, so I'm going to put it, delete them first. Right, so I'm going to, all right, so let me run simulation here. All right, so you can see that now I can directly change the value of the recipe database. Right, now I can just change it right, directly. Right, so this is our new feature. It is quite simple, right? Just change the recipe directly. Right, and there's one thing I need to remind you is that after you change the value on the CMT viewer, you need to wait for at least 5 seconds, and the data will be actually written into the HMI. Right, but it also depends on how busy HMI is. But at least you need to wait for 5 seconds to turn off your HMI. Otherwise, that the value will not be saved in the HMI. All right, 5 seconds at least. But if your HMI is busy, you need to wait a little bit longer for a few seconds more. All right, so this is recipe view edit. Right, so the last part is that started from this EasyBuilder Pro version, that we can use our PC to watch the IP camera's view directly. Right, before we can only see it on the HMI. Now we can use the PC to view it. Right, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to open the CMT viewer here. Okay, so I'm switch here. So you can see that I can. This is IP camera I use, and this is the view outside of our office. This is our city, Taipei City. I'm using this IP camera to show the view outside of our office. You can see that now I can use CMT viewer on my PC to watch the IP camera's view. All right, so it is actually quite simple, right? Now we have support, but there are a couple of things that you need to take note here. Is that the PC will need to have the video decoder. You need to install a decoder software on your PC that supports your IP camera. Otherwise, your CMT viewer cannot display the IP camera's view. All right. For example, here for the IP camera I use now, I use K-Lite codec pack. All right. This is a decoder software's name. It's called K-Lite codec pack. All right. I need to install this codec pack on my PC so I can use CMT viewer to view the IP camera. All right. So make sure that your PC or your customer's PC also have this video decoder installed. All right, this is the first thing. All right, and the second part is that because the IP camera is using the local IP here, if you want to use Easy Access 2.0 to view the HMI's IP cameras to view IP camera, right? You need to put it use pass-through Ethernet pass-through and fill in the IP camera's addresses. Right, so just like when you are using Easy Access to pass through a PLC, right? You need to put the IP address here, right? But because that the Easy Access 2.0 is using the VPN connection and the internet speed is not so fast, so sometimes you might need to change the video's format to lower quality, right? So in case that the VPN is not fast enough to transmit the image. All right. So these are two things about our IP camera to on CMT viewer. All right. At this moment, that the phone, the iOS or Android are not yet supported because basically that it is the codec problem. The decoder problem, because that on the PC we can easily install the decoder, right? We just download a software and install it. But on different phone that they will have different decoder problems. So at this step, at this phase, that we only support it on the PC. The cell phone or tablet are not yet supported. All right. All right, so this will be today's webinar today, right? So I hope you have heard something that is helpful for you. So if you have any questions, you can type your questions and we will answer your questions here.